Welcome, everyone. This is Jim Sporer with ISSIP, the International Society of Service Innovation Professionals, and it's my pleasure today to moderate. Zaid, who was going to moderate, uh, has uh, has a conflict today, so I will be the moderator, and we wish Zaid getting well quickly. Um, I'm Jim Sporer. I'm one of the founding board members of ISSIP and moderator today. I see a lot of familiar faces. Thanks for joining. Let me get the right underway so we can have a great discussion with our panelists. And we're going to kind of run this like a radio show. I'll be the radio announcer, and we have three panelists who will get us started. And then, of course, feel free to use the chat. Stay on mute, please, if you're not talking, and that way we'll get less background noise. Do put questions and comments into the chat so I'll know to call on you later. Um, and let's just dive in. And I want to share my screen just for a minute. Uh, this topic for today is uh, where can service systems benefit from intelligence augmentation, IA over AI automation? And I really want to thank uh, David Ng and Gary Metcalf, two of our ISIP ambassadors, for suggesting this series. This is the third in the series. And I want to thank Michelle Zhao, our third panelist, for agreeing to join us. We're going to get started with very brief introductions from me and a little bit of topic setting, but then I will go to each of them in turn, starting with you, Michelle, and then David, and then Gary. You can introduce yourself a little bit more and give us your thoughts on this topic. But when we think of service systems and augmentation, one of the first systems that come to mind is education, medicine, business, but there's a lot of others to consider. But there's also, in addition to the positive benefits of augmentation, there's also some harms to consider, like user privacy and misuse and de-skilling, and even emotional attachment and detachment. So I expect we'll have a lot of fun in this radio show Zoom today. And let me just introduce each of the panelists briefly. Michelle Zhao and I have known each other for quite a while. We were both at IBM Almaden Research in San Jose. Michelle led the user group. When I transitioned from Apple over to IBM, I led that group as well. A great group that Ted Selker started. And after a bit, Michelle became the founder of a startup company which is doing chatbots way before people had heard of OpenAI or ChatGPT. Michelle was out there pioneering intelligence augmentation with her company, and she'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a minute. David Ng and I have known each other for decades now. We were both at IBM as well, David in IBM Canada. And I came to know David because he was president of ISSS, which was the um, very well-known system sciences society. All the leading thinkers in systems theory have been past presidents, and David was the president. And I think we were at a meeting in Cancun, Mexico, when we first had a good time to sit down and talk about things. And David, of course, was also one of the pioneers at IBM in the service science area. And Gary Metcalf, also a past president of ISSS. And Gary also has a long history in business. Not at IBM that I know, Gary. I don't think you're the one panelist who was not a retired IBM, but I do know that when you and David and various colleagues in Japan got together, we created some book series and book chapters about service science. So we've collaborated for quite some time. So let's get into the topic today. And again, I'll remind people to stay on mute unless you're speaking, and that way we'll cut down on background noise. And please do use the chat to introduce yourself, where you're from, any questions or comments you have, your perspective on this topic. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now so we can go more into like the radio mode. And Michelle, let's start with you. What are your thoughts? Can you introduce yourself a little bit more, and what are your thoughts on this topic today?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Jim, for the invitation. So I'm Michelle Zhou. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Agentic AI company in Silicon Valley. So actually, like Jim said, even before the AI became very hot, and I have been working on since my PhD days, working on creating AI systems to help people. I would say using today's theme is to augment people, right? So you probably people have heard about it. Folks here have heard about it. We used to do software as a service. So right now there's another called the SaaS 2.0. It's service as a software, which means it is because of the AI capabilities have grown quite a bit. So we are really have been using AI to augment human capabilities in almost every single area, as Jim shared earlier. Just a couple of examples to maybe get folks' thoughts, and people can chime in, ask questions. So in education, so what do we mean about augmentation here? It is thinking about young students who wanted to learn soft skills. So let's say soft skills are very famous as critical thinking, right? Which is a leadership skill, or maybe soft skills such as business negotiation. I remember my days at IBM, we have to actually fight for the slots to get to a coach to actually learn business negotiation. But now AI really can augment human coaches to help people to practice those skills. So one of the example, we have worked with actually the top-notch instructors on Udemy, so who teaches actually business negotiation skills such as negotiate your salary, negotiate the buying, negotiate the selling, all these different types of negotiation. So he has a very, how to say, principled approach to it, but he doesn't have time to help you practice your business negotiation situation. So what happened is we worked with this instructor. I ingest his business negotiation, I would say wisdom, and then so let students to practice at their own time, at their own pace, but still following the business negotiation protocols and policies, and also but it also adapted to students' negotiation situation. For example, some students wanted to negotiate with their manager about the project, and some want to negotiate with their first job offer, right? Like salary offering. So it's very interesting. So that you can see, this is really what I mean is I really like the word augmentation versus fully automation. And in this case, you can fully automate it. So how can you just make a decision for a job candidate, how much salary you're going to make, right? And also negotiate it with for a person who wants to sell their software. So as you can see here, it's really about using machines automation adaptation capabilities but help people do their job better and learn even more skills. So that's I'm going to stop there. We have other examples in healthcare, other examples even in government. For example, motivational interviews for, let's say, interviewing suspects, interviewing witnesses, right? Some people know about motivation. Again, the idea here it is it's still leveraging the human experts' knowledge and their principles and their practical wisdom, and then help other
And then
people to even practice, right? Or learn the skills. So similarly for critical thinking, decision making, again, we leverage the human coaches principles and teaching protocols and help other people, students to learn how to apply critical thinking to their own situation. So there's a many examples I can actually, I would be happy to share. And but I'm going to stop here. Let the next panelist maybe to chime in first.
Yeah, yeah. And Michelle, I just want to echo something that you said. When you think about intelligence augmentation, these high stakes communications that people have to do, like a
Mhm,
student interviewing for a job or even preparing for a court case, these are or
mhm,
negotiating something in business, these high stakes communications the intelligence augmentation can be sort of like a rehearsal infrastructure where you can start to, prepare these conversations and so forth. So that's a great example. And like you said, it applies everywhere. Uh,
Yeah, so I'm glad that you mentioned about this one. So what we have been working on, we're trying to find a term, and thanks to the service, actually science concept and the community. So you could lots of services. So right now we try to carve out, we call it the human essential services. Human essential services like education, like healthcare, like even security, right? So it's have a character. These services have a characteristic, shared characteristics. It is humans are the center of those services, and often we call it high touch. High touch, which means it's always involve very complex, nuanced personal interactions. So those kind of services we found if you apply the augmented AI capability, AI augmentation, it's really terrific because they're time consuming. They're really, and especially even for humans, like thinking about the counselors, consultants, right? So they cannot deal with, let's say, some consultants we have been working with called the enrollment counselors. They cannot work with people 24/7. They cannot work with five students who need kind of counseling, right? So you can think about it is the augmentation becomes really important, not just for the target audience, but actually for the people who involved in a trade in this type of business, right? So who are consultants, coaches, counselors, and like you said, law actually we collaborated with a firm as well. Similarly, when people prepare those case statements, it requires a lot of work, and
mm,
then that you can and use the AI to help you to prepare and also critique the preparation, prepare the statements again, and also at any time, anywhere, right? So again, I like what you talk about service. So I said that. So we are trying to see what services. I
mm,
would like to see what other people might have thought about it. Is what kind of services would be the best for augmented intelligence. So we found that it's we call it human essential services seems a great area and
mm.
human, especially the high touch services.
Fantastic. So, Michelle, we'll circle back certainly on both the rehearsal part and the scaling of the human to human experts.
Yeah.
So, David, please introduce yourself a bit more and give us your thoughts on this topic in the
Hi.
radio show format, if you can.
So I'm David Ng. I'm now an adjunct professor at OCAD University in Toronto, which is a design school. I'm going to come at this from a little more historical perspective and actually ask questions more about what is being augmented here. And so if we go back in the history, people may have heard about socio-technical systems. And we can go back to the days of the coal mines when when the original research came out. And what happened was the introduction of a longbow machine. And what that did was it caused every human being, the way they had done work before was they would send a team of workers into the pit and they would work as a team. And that's the way they would get the coal out. But when you introduce the machine, then all the people became operators of cranks. And so they made people part of the machine. And the result of that was when they did the studies, it came out with the idea of autonomous work groups, which was how is it that we use the technology in teams, not just as individuals? So one
Mhm.
of the things that I think is happening with the focus on artificial intelligence is it's got us back into the reduction of individuals working in the technology as opposed to groups working in the technology. The second idea comes from the language action perspective, for those of you who are fans of Fernando Flores and Terry Winograd, and we get into conversations for action. Now, that also brings the question about, well, do you actually want automation where there is no human being and who actually makes commitments on behalf of the organization or the enterprise? And that's where it starts getting a little bit tricky. I'm reminded of when I first joined IBM, or actually about 5 years in, I was in a role, and we were running a conference in IBM Canada, And I asked, why is it that we have IBMers answering the phones to register people into this conference? And the response was, well, you can't really have students doing it because these are presidents and vice presidents. And so we actually have IBMers actually then answering the phone to register people for this conference. I get it. So you're not just automating that idea of registering, you're actually putting a human touch on it. So that's two ideas I'd like to inject into the comments that people would think about it. One is, how do we get teams working effectively in organizations? And secondly, where do we want commitments made by machines as opposed to commitments made by organizations?
Great. So many topics there. I can't keep up, David, as usual. But let's shift over to Gary. I did put a few comments in, but Gary, please introduce yourself and give us some of your thoughts on this topic.
Thanks, Jim. So let me take a slightly different tack on even the introduction. I began my PhD in 1995 as I was nearing kind of my exit out of corporate work. And I did this at it was at a university based in California, a real small place that had been founded in the mid 1970s and it never had a campus. Okay, so I'm doing essentially distance learning at a PhD level starting in 1995. Email is pretty new at that point. And the primary contact with faculty members was, you know, 2 times a year. We would go like, 1 week times to meet with faculty, other students. But everything else was at a distance, through even mail communication. And when you do that, you automatically have to begin asking, so how do you make education work in a format that is atypical? Now, in 1995, most universities in the US would have nothing to do with distance learning. They saw it as being, a correspondence course or somehow inferior, and a lot of people would just simply demand that there was just no way to learn adequately that way. Well, I don't agree with that, but it takes a lot of discipline. And so from the very beginning of my own PhD and leading through 20 years of teaching, um, at every step along the way, the technology was advancing, but it's still the same questions. How do you deconstruct the experience of a really good classroom and put it into a different format where increasingly there is technology available? So, what is good to do synchronously? What is better asynchronously? Because it gives people time to reflect. How do you take an experience and how do you begin to transfer that through technologies over time so that you most enhance the things that work the best? And obviously now, we're now to a place where people are talking about AI in education in a very real way. And most of it is pretty critical, kind of like people talked about distance learning at the very beginning. So, it's not the same. AI is only used for cheating in some way. Well, no, that's not the only way to use it, but it is a choice of how we use it, and we're still learning an awful lot about it. So I personally find using AI for search-related summary work to be incredibly efficient. I don't use AI for the generative part. I don't use it for drafting work. That's personally for me, my work. And so the best way of augmenting my particular work, my research, my writing that I do, is that AI is really efficient for things that used to require a lot of manual search, a lot of manual summaries of my own. And I don't trust it unto itself, but I find it to be a really good start to being able to grasp information that, it makes that process more efficient.
Great. Let's keep building on that. I like that a lot. Gary, where are we using uh, AI to augment ourselves today? Generative AI, LLMs, etc. Michelle, how are you augmenting yourself these days?
Uh, so in our case, there's two, like Gary mentioned, right? So there, I would say a wider range of tasks depending on what you want. So first one, like Gary, I also use AI as a tool. So for example, use AI to summarize something, right? So you have an article and you put it in and you say summarize it for you. So this saves you a lot of time to read. But for example, especially when you need to review, but I would never ask AI to say, okay, what's your opinions? Because I don't trust it, right? And but I wanted to have a summary in case, humans have their biases too. Even you read, you may miss something, right? So I think it's very, use it as a tool, and you are I would say you are in a driver's seat and make decisions. So second part of it is to automate certain repetitive and it's I would say, well structured tasks. So like I said, human services, like for example, in our, I think right now we took it down, and in our website, we used to have the AI agent, we call it a welcome agent, right? To ask people, and why are you here today? What what brings you here today to chat with me? What are you looking for, right? So basically, as we call it a recipient, also like a what do you call it? Not a concierge per se, um, receptionist, right? Like in a lobby, you can think about it. Having a person here to welcome the guests will be great, but the receptionists normally do not give you the very in-depth introduction of the products or services. But that hello makes a huge difference. We always say is make your website and make your the front, the digital front much more lively, much more welcome, felt more welcoming, right? So that's one we do. And again, it's like right now, because the AI has been advanced to different capabilities, like sometimes I will create illustrations. Again, AI can read your mind, so it doesn't really know what you want, right? So you have to very iteratively refine your design. Like I create some right now, actually very interesting. I created birthday cards for my families using AI. So I would upload the image and then ask AI to, based on the image, and change it somehow, right? To make a, I found that that's very interesting and very, you have a personal touch there too, because you knew what the person you are targeting wants, right? So that's what. So another thing I wanted to touch upon a little bit, if I may, about David In's point about the teaming. So AI not just helping the individuals, but actually can help team. That's actually a very important concept. We have done some collaborative research with the UIUC computer science department. So what happened there, it is in a university, actually they want to teach teaming skills, right? Because in the real world, everybody nobody's rarely works on their own. They have to work in a team. So in order to teach students teaming skills, so they normally put students into different groups, like teams, right? So they can collaborate and finish a term project from the beginning of the term to end of the term. But one of the challenges it is they don't know how to team up together, because the students come and go. They may not even know each other, right? So this is one problem. Another problem it is students actually, they want to play different types of roles in a team. Not necessarily everybody wants to be a team leader. You will be very surprised if you ask them directly in a survey. Everybody say, I want to be a team leader, because it's for social desirability biases. Everybody wants to show their leadership. But then what we did with them collaboratively, so actually we have a paper published that people can be welcome to look it up, called Who Will Be My Teammates? So what happened there it is, so we have an AI agent who chats with each student in that classroom individually with privacy, right? So then you will see what students want. How do they want to play a role in a team? So then we found that it is very interesting. So teaming has been studied by psychologists, by many human factor scientists many years, but they have never found that is for short-term projects the best team actually defined by characteristics we found, which is interesting. It is by, we call it emotional two characteristics: emotional diversity and emotional insensitivity. People always think about it. If everybody who is emotional, more sensitive in a team, the team will do better. No, 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 no. It's completely opposite. If the team has a varied emotionality, the team will do better. You know why? Because in a short-term project, you want people who are very impulsive, who are very eager, but you also want the people who lay back, right? Who are more calm, who are more actually more thinkers. So you have this composition of the diversity of the team emotionality. The team will do better. It beats, actually very interesting. It beats the team who has the highest GPA. A team who has actually had a group of friends, they're doing much better, right? And another one is emotional sensitivity. What it means it is, we thought if people are more sensitive, more, how do you say, you care about other people, the team will do better, has less conflict. Completely opposite. That if I have an average of the team's emotional sensitivity high, the team actually has a higher conflicts, higher emotional stress for the team member, because the people always guessing, oh my God, they don't like me. I maybe offended somebody. And on the opposite, when the emotional sensitivity actually is lower on average, the team has less conflicts. It's more harmonious, right? So take a look at the paper. It was very interesting. And we found this kind of, that's the reason why we found this one is because AI actually helped us find this one. AI did a one-on-one interview and inferred the people's personality traits from this casual conversation without asking them to take a personality test. So people are very honest, they're very truthful.
Interesting.
Then we think, we think this one can be used for David's point. It is, it can help the team formation, and also AI could be as an augmented teammate to even mediate, help some of the team resolve team conflicts.
Great, great. So David, what do you think?
That's really wonderful. Now I have a little homework to do because now I have to read Michelle's paper. So we had the fortunate coincidence or accident where at the end of last year at OCAD University, the person who had been teaching the system thinking course since 2009, Peter Jones, had moved on to Mexico. And so I came in to fill in, and we had the question, well, it's a good time to restructure the course if we're ever going to restructure it. Do we actually take on AI and bring it into the course directly, or do we just ignore it and wait for something else to catch up? And of course, we're ahead of all the university policies. Said, no, we're going to try this out. And so where I see AI coming in and the opportunity to enhance is actually in critical thinking. And critical thinking is really tough to teach. I'm still trying to work out how the Jesuits do it because they appear to teach their students the best on how to do that. But the sort of demonstration that we started at the beginning of the class is like, one of the questions that's easy to ask in AI is, given that we're going to have this course in understanding systems, what's the difference between the way that Peter Jones would teach the course and David Ng would teach the course? Because both of us are on the internet, we both blog a lot. And so it came out, and anyone could try that, and it's like, oh wow, it's like this is a better essay than either Peter or I could write. Plus, they did a lot faster, right? But having students actually now change their mindset into what I would call a single answer, into the idea of being able to ask questions in intelligent ways, is a real challenge. And so there's a video that I had done on the design of inquiring systems and how it implies, because you want things like debate built in to into the AI. But the idea of teaming and having these sorts of things working together, it's still very, very new. Now, this is at the master's level, so we're talking about people in their late 20s and early 30s. So it's not like they're not used to technology. It's not like they haven't used it, but the variability across the team was very, very interesting. Now, one of the things I do in my courses is that typically I give students more than they can handle. And I say, look, the way that I assign readings is I like to assign like lots of readings. Like if we didn't do in this course, but I had other courses, I'll give you 20 articles to read. And the idea should be that what you do is that read an article. If you don't like it, move on. Because if you're taking this as a team, the whole team will have read the whole body of articles. And then they have a discussion about what it is that they're getting out of the articles. And I say the worst thing about learning systems thinking is reading more doesn't always help. You have to get into the discussions about how you interpret what's happening, because systems are like, we have people coming from design backgrounds, engineering backgrounds, business backgrounds, architecture backgrounds. And so the synthesis of all of their work is where the value is. And so what I'd like students to do is actually take all those perspectives. Now, one of the more interesting outcomes that came about was that actually there are multiple students in the class where English is not the first language. And what they said was that, well, the first thing we did was we threw it into the AI and we read the articles in Chinese. So it's like, he says, I understand it's only 90% correct, but if you're coming with English as a second language and you're having to read these really hard journal articles, maybe 90% is better than not, and you have multiple articles. And so I agree that now as an instructor, I'm learning from the student. It's like, if you can't get those articles or you don't want to read the whole thing, dump it in AI, get the main ideas, and then when you go back and look at the article again, it's, this is what they're trying to say.
Great, thanks, David. Let's maybe open it up to others. We've got quite a distinguished group of folks on the call.
Jim, can I make a real quick segue just to follow up on the team thing?
Please, yes. Please.
I'll make it brief. So my first career actually was as a family therapist, working with kids and families in shelters. Okay, that translated for me into doing team facilitation in my corporate work. And you know, it was a curious thing for me because the team dynamics, the group dynamics within teams can be incredibly complicated. But people kind of assume that if you just put people together, they'll figure it out, you know, and or it will emerge or whatever. And so sometimes what I did was work with teams where things were not working well. But in reality, what you've described, Michelle, I'm really curious about how the AI bots that you design and work with can facilitate what normally would be a really good practice in corporate work, get somebody to help put together the team well at the beginning so that you have those foundations. Now, most corporations wouldn't devote the time and the resources to do that, but an AI bot could very well perform those kind of functions, I believe, in a way that people would see as being more efficient, could kind of cover the ground, could do the things I think you're describing in terms of just sort of laying the groundwork initially for the relationships in the team, and you know, play that role in a way that would be pretty productive for an awful lot of places. So
yeah. So thank you, Gary. Actually, I will, after maybe offline, I will talk to you about your practice of the family practice, which is very interesting. It's another scenario. We have been working with a psychologist in Boston to help her actually coaching the parents how to best communicate with kids as well, right? So interesting you said this one. So what one of our what I said, our company's core area for research and development is to actually using AI, I would say, to augment psychologists to really understand the unique characteristics of each individual. So that's one of the things we have been working on for the past now 15 years now. So what happened there it is, and Jim knows this work, and we at IBM, we started as IBM Watson Personality Insights. And when we came out, and we actually completely redid the algorithm because we, as a startup, we have to be much cheaper and much more efficient and also much more accurate as well. And so the idea here it is you want to use AI to analyze people's communication digital footprints. Of course, at people's opt-in, right? We always ask people, do you want to do this? And then have you done that? Then the one of the, from a psychology point of view, one of the problem is the traditional called item-based test. That is, people are subject to faking because, as I said, a social desirability issue, right? If you say, oh, I don't like to work with people, nobody will tell you they are really, but some people really don't like to work with people, right? So in this case, it is using AI, you can understand the human core characteristics much more objectively and in certain dimensions much more accurately. Again, there's a 5-university study on testing our AI's capabilities, understanding individual personality, and use that to compare with the traditional assessments, right? That's another paper, not by us, it's by the independent 5-university professors. Check out that one. It will be interesting to see. And maybe let's take the questions, because I want to have one comment on David's point on how AI could help people. And I want to hear the questions first, then I will comment on that, because I think it's important to share in today's AI, not just the one-shot deal. You say, okay, I go there, summarize it. What the AI we are striving for to actually creating, it's this iterative actually help step by step, right? Like, for example, critical thinking. David, I will share with you actually AI agent who teaches you critical thinking in a particular way. It's called the challenging assumptions. Take you step by step and using your situation and critique how you have done by challenging assumptions you have in your decision-making process. I will share with you a link. Try it out and see if you like it, and give us some feedback, right? So again, let's hear about that from our audience, because I'm pretty sure they have lots of thoughts. And
yeah, maybe we'll start with Kevin Clark, who just popped onto my screen. And Kevin, what are your thoughts on this, the topic, or any questions to our panelists?
Well, I really live by the phrase "ridding the world of unjustified assumptions." Right, is a critical starting point. And when I think about the news that has basically been announced over the last 72 hours, that OpenAI and companies are jumping into places where McKinsey was, right? Saying, we will help you, right, harness this and, think about how you're going to use our technology in your organization, is moving from creating foundation models to creating, context for use cases, right? And moving into into the world of useful applications, as opposed to general experiments. So I'm thinking that we're about to go into the smaller models and knowledge graphs that really are going to create specific types of organization value, because the trough of disillusionment with what we've been doing is becoming pretty manifest, right? And so we're going to start to look at what is the actual return on investments. The CFOs are going to start to sound off, in my opinion. So if you wanted to know where my head and heart is right now, that's where it is, right, in this space. So that's not a question, it's an observation.
Sure. So what do you let's see what the panelists' reaction to that is, about the that news, and the problems, I guess, with the current generation, and maybe the smaller models will be more accurate within their domains or whatever. Any thoughts on it?
So my comment is back now. This is on the language action side. Who is taking accountability for what? Now, having been an IBM consultant and worked on methodology, my question is to every consultant that's ever given me a slide, it's, are you prepared to be sued on that slide? And they go, what? I go, we give recommendations. If we give bad recommendations, we get sued.
Yeah.
So if McKinsey is going to offer that, then okay, let lawsuits fly.
All right, great. Let's go. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, David. Stephen Alter, I see you have come off or turned on your camera. Do you have a comment or question? We can't hear you.
Yes, I do. So I thought that Michelle's comment at the beginning about human essential services was quite interesting. And one of the reasons it was interesting was that there are a lot of services that some people think are human essential and others do not think are human essential. Therefore, it seems to me like whether or not something is human essential in many situations is a matter of preference, not a matter of science or anything else. And so, for instance, at one time, I learned how to differentiate and integrate in calculus when I was in high school. The way I learned that was through a little book that the professor gave us. We liked the professor. He said, well, it's kind of stupid for me to stand up in front of you and tell you how to do this. Take this little book, take a formula, try it out. You'll see what are the obvious wrong answers. Do the next one, and just go through it.
Mhm.
Now, some people would say, well, it's a human essential service that you have this professor standing there and waving his arms and telling us how to integrate and differentiate. But in fact, it wasn't. It was better for us to not have the professor do that.
Yeah.
In a similar way, I'm a musician. I play the cello, but at one point I wanted to learn to play the piano. So I started taking some piano lessons with this excellent pianist. And he said, well, you got to learn scales. So let's learn the scales. And looking at it in retrospect, I wouldn't mind having some kind of AI thing teach me the scales. If it was a well done AI thing, it would teach me, no, your fourth finger isn't pressing down right, and other stuff like that. And you might imagine that a human being should be the one who's doing that. And I have my relationship with my teacher. I really liked him, and so on and so forth. But in fact, as an adult, it doesn't really matter that much. If I want to learn scales, I got to actually learn scales. So my question is, how do you determine whether something is human essential or not beyond asking, well, what do you prefer? I mean, there's some that are obviously human essential, really obvious, and there's some that are obviously not human essential. So for the areas that where it's somewhat ambiguous as to whether something is or is not human essential, how do you decide that?
Hmm.
I think, Steve, thank you, by the way, thank you for your question. Very interesting. So in our field experience by working with universities, healthcare organizations, and sometimes even agencies, we found it is what do we call it about human essential services? It is at least one part of it, humans has to be the center, right? In terms of comparing to full automation. For examples you mentioned that you want to learn how to play a particular instrument. You want to learn how to do the calculus, right? You as a human. So that's one of the ingredient in this particular one. So let's say put you on side. It's a machine wants to learn how to do calculus. The machine wants to learn a music scale. There's no human involved there, right? So that's why one of the another part of it is from our experience, we have found very interesting in this way is normally the human essential services, there is two sides of a human. So there is a receiving side, there's a giving side. So the giving side, depending on their level of knowledge and expertise. I want to use Gary's example about the family practice. You basically help families, right? So we worked with one of the psychologists, the clinician, basically. So what happened there it is this person has the vast amount of domain expertise knowledge. She teaches parents how to best communicate, basically how to deal with problem children, right? How to best communicate, how to best help their child, basically help their child's behavior, right? Improve their behavior. So she has this expertise, like you said, but she doesn't really have a time 24/7. Let's say parents said, my child just threw a tantrum. He doesn't took the garbage out. He doesn't walk the dog. What should I do? Right? So you don't, the psychologist can afford to do this one. She can afford to have all the customers. So in that case, it is this very high touch human services becomes augmented by AI. So she teaches AI how to deal with those situations, if common situations, and then she can leave her time on teaching AI and dealing with even higher, what I said, more complex situations. So basically augments her time. But in this case, it is the human touch comes two-sided. One, it is she is still the ultimate decision maker. She still needs to meet with the parents, but with limited time. Another part of it is her teaching, her practical wisdom will be will be actually ingested by AI to actually use her principle. She's very insisting on it has to be my methods. Can't be anybody else's methods. So one majority of the AI agents today it is they just make up things. That's not completely unacceptable because by the experts it is like for Gary's smiling. If it's your practices, you don't want AI to say, okay, I'm gonna go my own way, right? You can't. Has to be your way. As we working with this instructor on Udemy, same thing. He was so persistent, said, oh, this is how I teach negotiation. So your AI has to teach negotiation in this way, my way, not his own way, right? But it can be adapted to each individual, each student situation. So I'm not sure if I answer your question completely. Means it is they have to have a human element from a recipient side of it. They also has to have the human element on the giving side of it, which the experts must be in control. There's no full automation there.
Yeah. If I could respond quickly, Michelle, about there's a part of this I think that is just related to simple automation, right? If you've got a therapist who's been practicing for 20 years,
Yeah.
they understand that there's a lot of pretty familiar things that go on. And they probably are capable of saying, okay, these are patterns that I could look at. And, if I look across all the families and all the parents I've dealt with over all this time, I can probably consolidate a lot of what I do into some pretty basic things that could be instructive as much as they necessarily are diagnostic for everybody individually. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the final result. But
Yep.
it's a pretty good entree to say,
Mhm.
let's give information based on repetitive patterns and
Mhm.
see if that's helpful, and then see where it goes that either that was not sufficient or is very particular to this case or just needs the additional professional follow-up. But a lot of the front end work has been helped because, it does allow that therapist to do more with more people and then focus on the more individual specialized part at the end.
Yep. I think Gary, the keyword in your one, I really love it. It's about patterns. So machines learn on patterns. I just gave Steve's example. He wants to learn a particular, let's say playing guitar, right? So if you have loads of data, this is a really different kinds of data like today's LLMs are trained on. So if you have a data about those, we call it tacit knowledge, right? So if they
Mhm.
knew that given your age, given your background, let's say you knew how to play music instrument versus me, I am completely music illiterate, right? So they will tell you, oh, given your situation, people often and don't pay attention. Maybe people often make mistakes on this one. So then you got, because you don't have the data by yourself, individual, right? But if the machine has all these kinds of data, that will be great. This one still saves a lot of time and effort versus asking a human to take care of every single situation, which can be abstracted, can be leveraged by machine. I think Gary, you really touched the gold word. It's patterns, right?
Very good. Let's hear from Martha Russell. Hey, Martha. Thank you all on that topic.
Hi, thank you. What an interesting conversation. Michelle and Gary, I want to build a little bit on your description of the assessment of the user for the adaptation of the AI and also the kind of practical wisdom that's required in some human, uses of AI, and suggest a very interesting 8-episode podcast that was written by the author of the film Contagion. If you saw that, a horror movie about the pandemic, it actually was written 10 years before COVID hit us. But Scott C. Burns develops actually a team of AI agents. Now, I don't want to give it away, but a team of AI agents to explore what it would be like as a screenwriter to use AI to write a sequel, to use AI to imagine the presentation, to imagine a writer's group, which is, similar to the complexity of a team and, a therapist working with a family, and to imagine the presentation to the executives who might fund it, the musician who's writing the soundtrack. It's a very interesting listen, and it explores many of the ideas that we are talking about, as well as invoking some experts on empathy, for example, Sherry Turkle, to make her comments on some of these aspects of AI.
Great example. Wow, we'll have to check that out, Martha. Thanks for sharing that with us. And I also saw you put in a Stanford paper that we need to check out. So thanks so much.
That one also is very interesting. The Dream Team, the one-armed bandit approach.
Good. Thanks for those resources. Yeah, anyone else with resources like that, please do share. We would enjoy that. And Matt from Boston, do you have any thoughts? And for folks who don't know Matt, could you introduce yourself, because you have a very interesting organization that you're part of and lead.
Sure. I lead the Consortium for Service Innovation. So I often say we're a bit of a sister organization to ISSIP, but we do much more in just the pure business world, less on the academics. But obviously, how artificial intelligence is being used in support services in the technology field is just about the only topic anybody talks about these days. And I saw that. I've loved the discussion today. I saw a presentation by Stuart French, who works for the Energy Safe Victoria in Australia. And he was talking about, which very much goes to the concept of how could we use AI to help us with critical thinking or training on critical thinking. But how do you use AI as a mentor? So instead of giving somebody the answer, how can you use it to guide them? And the examples they were using were a lot about, they run the gas lines and stuff like that in Victoria. And, there is a lot of tribal knowledge in people's heads that gets passed on while you're out in the field doing work. And now they've started to use AI just to give answers to people in the field, and it's going horribly wrong. So how can you shift it to be a mentor to kind of guide you to learning the solution on your own? Even if it knows the solution, it doesn't just want to give you the solution, but guide you to figure out the solution on your own, which I think goes very much to what this discussion was today. But it was the first time I saw a really very practical application of AI as a mentor, because it went too far in trying to give somebody the answer and they weren't fixing things the right way, and there were lots of problems. So very, very, very connected to the discussion today, I think.
Okay.
Maybe the humanoid robots will help there, Matt.
Maybe when the robot can go fix the gas line, but today it's still a person.
The tacit knowledge transfer is quite a bug. Anybody who's ever taught a kid to ride a bicycle knows tacit knowledge is what it's all about. So Christoph, I don't think we've heard from anybody from Europe. Let's hear from Christoph. Hey,
yes,
Christoph.
Thank you, Jim, for having me here. Thank you all. Nice discussion. European perspective would be a bit different, because we are, of course, working on the LLMs, and they show in minor languages the results are like in the beginning of AI, when also the other LLMs, the English and Chinese ones, were not trained. So we are just starting off, and there are some disadvantages, of course, there. I have to tell you a story about emails. You started discussion with emails. I remember when Tim Berners-Lee was working in CERN in Switzerland, and I'm also in Switzerland in Bern. I'm a political scientist and a mass media scientist and an impact researcher on the digital channels. When Tim Berners-Lee started in Geneva, they were sending an email from Swiss Federal Institute of Technology to Geneva. And before, of course, they were taking the phone and said, there's an email coming, attention, please. And then when I look at my emails, I'm leading two of the biggest semiconductor projects of the EU in the board. And they sent me 11,000 emails in 3 months, So I would like to have AI for solving my email problems, would be good. Okay, anyway, but what is interesting is really also the critical thinking issue. That's something that is bothering me for a long time. When I'm teaching students, I tell them, you are too expensive. Your parents have to pay a lot of money. You are spending your time to fool around with me as a lecturer or assistant professor at the university. in Switzerland, there is heating needed in winter because the room would be too cold to teach, and everything is expensive, costs a lot of money. So the only reason to be there is actually critical thinking. We have to learn to put in question what they serve us, what they tell us, what PR is telling us, and we have to understand why, what the heck is behind all this, these sparky, funny things. So, and this is a big job of my work is measuring on the channels. Human essential, of course, human essential is interesting, human centric. We are measuring that on more than 14,000 channels like search engines, social media, e-shops, etc. We measure what people do there. And then we also validate and reliability test this amount of data so that we can do complexity research on all the digital channels to see, to measure impact. And I was just honored recently by Wikipedia, before I'm dead. This is nice to have a Wikipedia account about me as an impact researcher, because when I started 25 years ago, people thought this man must be crazy. Nobody can measure the internet, but I can tell you it's still possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's, we want to wrap up soon. We've got like 3 minutes left, but Michelle, do you have a thought? You came on your video. Do you have a thought you want to share?
I just want to really thank everybody. Thank you for inviting me. Thank everybody's comments here and also my co-panelists. I think what Matt mentioned is another scenario which is very important for AI to address as well. So just to sum it up, in order to do this, what I call it, we talk about this topic is augmented intelligence, right? In order to execute on augmented intelligence, the AI would require the how would I call it, like a matter called mentoring and coaching or counseling type of capabilities, right? And we given the patterns of, I'm going to use Gary's one, given the patterns of the human tacit knowledge, is a human has to teach it, and hopefully they can augment humans in those high touch services. So that's my maybe 1 minute summary. Yeah.
Yeah, we are just about out of time, so let me ask David and Gary if they have a last thought, and we'll wrap up. David?
Sure. So today's conversation to me demonstrates the augmentation as opposed to the automation, because just meeting people with the right ideas, I can follow you on feeds now, but I never would have known to have found you if I was using an AI.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting thought, David. That's good to keep in mind. Yeah, our human networks are and Kevin Clark, before he had to drop, really liked your you could be sued on this chart and who's accountable. That's a big difference, isn't it? And Gary, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I'm really interested in the potential of scale for AI. So, right now we deal with these, we're kind of victimized almost, it feels like, by the giant large language models, the ones that are corporate, the ones that we all sort of have to work with. But really, what is the potential for people to create their own data set, to really customize at a level that becomes very individualized, not separate necessarily from, but truly an individualized model of something that connects to larger ones as needed, so that we get to that personal sense of what AI can do.
Nice. Very nice thought, Gary. Great. Well, thank you all today. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Michelle and David and Gary, and thanks all the participants. I can I know some people may have to drop off. We're at the top of the hour, so please feel free to drop off. But if anybody wants to stick around for 5 more minutes, I'll stick around for 5 minutes. And I see Thang put in a thank you. Michelle Leonard, I tried to call on you briefly, and I realized we had a name conflict. But Michelle Leonard, you came on video? Did you have a thought you wanted to share with us? For those of us who can stick around a few minutes, we can't hear you because you're on mute, though. Michelle from Switzerland. There we go.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for all the people. It's so important topic for me because today, notably with service science, I think we must be very careful about responsibility of the direction of society, of the societies. And we have a very nice field of observation on how people can interact together, teammates and so on, and to find the good intentions. My facet today is to consider that the center of my personal reflection for design service systems, the center is for me the life, with so various facets of life, because the user has their own life. And when they interact with artificial intelligence or other computer application, they have always their own life to direct. I don't know if I am clear what I propose. Do you listen me? Hello, Jim?
Yeah, I'm still here. I think my internet is unstable.
Okay, it's only one comment, but many thanks for all these words. We are doing in the good sense for me.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle Leonard from Switzerland. And thanks again to all of you for today. And with that, I think we'll call it a wrap and have a, feel free to follow up on this, send out some emails if you've got additional resources or comments. But thank you all. Bye for now.
Thank you. Super
Bye.
interesting.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye now.